Hey everybody, welcome to Babel Dances. It's a she thing. We are here today to talk about a really important topic that we selected called How Dare She. Now, the reason why we arrived at this topic was because we were looking at the hashtags for International Women's Day, and this year we're focusing on the hashtag Choose to Challenge. And the reason why we chose the title How Dare She was we realized that the definition of women in this day and age is forever changing. In the past, women in workplaces who were strong used to be regarded as really bossy. If they put their foot down about anything, they will be regarded as stubborn. And there's so many ways in which women couldn't just exist and be themselves. And I find that in this day and age, for us anyway, women can be whatever it is that they want. We no longer need to fit into this really cute, neat box about what being a woman is, like even with our bodies, right? It used to be about being busty, but still petite. When it comes to your opinions, you have to be opinionated and know what you're talking about, but you have to deliver your message in a really sweet way. And I find that there is only one specific way that women had to be, which is just right. So nowadays, we've sort of taken back control of what it means to be a woman. There are so many ways in which we choose to define ourselves these days. And today, I've invited three incredible women here with me on the panel today to chat about how they've chosen to navigate through all different definitions of what it means to be a woman. They have the audacity to live their life as their truest self, regardless of how people think of them, regardless of how people view them. Today, thank you so much for the three of you for coming on the panel. Melizarani and Osman, Alicia Amin, welcome to How Dare She. My name is Nicole Chen, so I am with Babel Dance. I do business management with Fella Design on the side. I also do content creating on Instagram, and I teach that. So that's my little introduction. Let's start with Alicia Amin. So as far as I know, you are a model. You're breaking boundaries when it comes to modeling. You are an actress. You are a DJ, and you are also recently married. So congratulations.
Thank you.
How was it? How was the pandemic marriage for you?
Well, I think a pandemic wedding is the way a wedding should be, man. Just intimate, people that only you care about. Like, who gives a hoot about the aunties, uncles, random people that you have to please? So that was really nice. But yeah, basically you've introduced me for me, model, actress, DJ. Yeah.
All right, so welcome Alicia to the panel. Now, speaking of being married, we also have a mom on the panel, Miss Anne Osman. So Miss Anne is Malaysia's first ever female pro mixed martial arts fighter. She's also the first ever Muslim woman to compete in an international MMA arena. Now you are a corporate speaker and you are also a mom. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I was excited when Maybelline, invited me, and I was like, oh yeah, for sure. And I love the whole theme, that Babel Dance have this year. Yeah, what was? Sorry, I forgot. But yeah, I totally love it. Yeah, I filmed that. But yeah, it's been a journey ever since I started competing in MMA. I'm still in it, although I'm not actively competing because right now I'm focused on all these brand new roles that I have with me. And I totally agree with Alicia. You're so lucky to get married during the pandemic. I wish I had that because I did a little intimate wedding and I got the hoots from so many people. And you just kind of like brush them off and say, hey, this is what I want, for my wedding, for the future that I want to have. So, but anyways, thanks for having me on board.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your little introduction. And last but definitely not the least on the panel, we have Melizarani. Now, I think you're the person who probably intimidated me the most because of the portfolio that you have. You are a spoken word poet. You are an author. You're a journalist. And you've also written a book back in 2015 called Taboo, which is about your representation of yourself as an Indian woman. So yeah, short introduction to yourself.
Hi, Nicole. Hi, everybody. Very happy to be here. No reason to be intimidated. Just very happy to be here. Yes, I've been doing spoken word poetry for about 10 years. And I predominantly write about the experiences and the intricacies of the Indian identity and also what it means to be an Indian woman in this day and age. And I think, yeah, that definition is constantly growing and expanding, and there's lots to write about. I'm currently based in Singapore, and and I'm still doing poetry and lots of stuff in the literary arts. So very happy to be part of this conversation and see where it goes. Yeah.
Yay! All right. Thank you all so much for being here. And I think what we're going to do is just jump straight into the questions. Now, the first question we have is actually a very, very chill question. We were thinking so long about how we wanted to start it off, but we were like, you know what? There are so many ways to define what being a woman is. And now it's so limitless and boundless. There's no way for you to be. So the question that we actually wanted to start things off with is, what's your favorite part of being a woman? Let's go with Alicia.
Well, my favorite part about being a woman, I mean, this is a little controversial, but I actually like being underestimated a little bit at the start, you know, because then you can just kind of like knock people off of their feet and they're like, what just hit me? That does kind of incite a little bit of this whole like defensive, like, oh yeah, she's, you know, all of these excuses, like, oh, why is she doing well? She's a woman, this, she's that, or she's not that elegant, she's not that sweet, she's not whatever. But I love it, you know, because people just don't know what's going to hit them. That's what I love about being a woman right now.
Yeah, I mean, I find that what you were saying about like, oh, you're still sort of like perpetuating that women are weak. It's not about that at all, you know. It's more like the expectations are set for so low for us sometimes that it's like all you want to do is just go out there and crush it. Like for me too, my favorite thing is actually crying. I love crying, but more importantly is that when I cry, I'm at my most vulnerable self and I'm taken so seriously for it. Whereas I find that like men, if they cry, they just get brushed off or people don't take them seriously. So that's something that I really appreciate about being a woman. And let's go to you. What is your favorite thing about being a woman?
Well, I gotta agree with what Alicia was saying, you know, about like being underestimated, and you know that's how pretty much, you know, what I encountered when I actually started MMA. You know,
I can imagine.
I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up like training martial arts, and people are like, "Oh, she's just another eye candy." Oh, you know, they're just trying to add another, you know, like another eye candy. Aside from the ring girls, they didn't expect anything from me. But I'm like one of the veterans and won championship. And even after retiring, they appreciated me so much that they wanted me to be their talent recruiter. So, you know, people underestimate you, especially when you're a woman, and that's when you're gonna hit them. You know, you hit them when they least expected it. But another part of, you know, being a woman that I love, especially after being a mother, maybe getting in touch with my motherhood, but is our ability, you know, to give birth. And it's not just physically like, you know, giving birth to another human being, but, you know, we give birth to so much, like what Alicia said, you know, people underestimate us and we just give birth to so many things, you know, careers, you know, creating name, creating brand, creating champions, you know, people always, like I said, you know, these things that they underestimate of, and we make gold out of it. So that's what I love about being a woman.
Yeah, and you literally hit it out of the park. Haha, pun intended. Okay, let's go to Melizarani. Your favorite thing about being a woman?
So I think that question, the answer really depends on which time of the month you ask that question. So I think that needs to be acknowledged immediately. And but I think for me, when I saw that question, I think it's very interesting based on what you know, Anne and Alicia have brought up as well, is that when you're a woman in this day and age in 2021, you still have this these little titles of the first woman, the first Malaysian woman. And these are sort of like a reckoning to help people understand that we've lived in such a patriarchal society for so long that even in 2021, it's still, you are still the first person to do something. The idea of pioneering in something as a woman is still like, you know, it's still like very, very exciting for some people and also troubling in other ways. So being able to recognize that is something I would say a favorite thing of mine at this point in time.
Yeah,
I mean, like, no, I totally agree with that. I think it's crazy now that you've put it that way, for everyone to kind of stop and think like, oh yeah, you know, like this, there are still so many firsts to be done. And while yes, it is troubling, but at the same time, it's reason to celebrate, because there are all of these women who have been the first of this, first of that. Young girls can go, I want to be the first to do something. So that also sets sort of like a goal a goal for people, you know, for young girls or any women of any age, you know what I mean? So that's, yeah.
Exactly. And you know, on top of that, like if you look at how young girls are looking at history now, there's a lot of rewriting that's taking place.
Yes.
That people are starting to go and excavate who was the first woman who actually participated in NASA and all these other things.
Yes.
So yeah, this is great. It's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
people can
think, yeah.
Yeah, go on. And
No, so like, yeah, I really like the point that you were saying, you know, that angle of like, in one part, you know, we've been living in such a patriarchal age for the longest time, even in this, you know, in 2021. And then at the other side of the coin, you know, we're being celebrated. I think it's really interesting. I love that.
Yeah, like I think for me, it's like it's optimistic to look at it and be able to feel so proud of it. But really the goal is for us to not even have to do that anymore, you know? Like one day we're just going to get to the point where it's just about women achieving and doing amazing things as much as men do, and it's going to be the norm for us, you know. But a lot of things that like, so we're like talking about achieving really, really big goals. But I remember being a kid and remembering that the one thing that I wanted to be when I grew up was sexy. It was like over anything else, developing my personality, figuring out my career, I wanted to be hot. And I find that's a word that men use to describe us a lot. And it's something that's just so sinister in our society that we don't realize. So even when it comes to like pop culture, like superhero movies, they will build women based on what the males think women are like. And
male
often
gaze.
the male gaze, exactly. So you see that they're wearing skin tight, like ridiculous skin tight outfits that don't even make sense if you want to do any kind of superhero work, and you're wearing heels for God's sake. And all these women are so devoid of personality. Now, what do we want to do with this is take back the definition of what sexy means, because I don't think it just means sexy physically to a woman. So let's start with and what do you think sexy means to you?
You know, when you brought that up and I saw the question, it really reminded me of Scarlett Johansson's interview where, you know, everybody just came at her asking, you know, what's the latest diet? Like the men get all the like interesting questions and she get the diet, you know, rabbit diet questions and, you know, how to fit in a skin tight suit. And I mean, if you look at Black Widow in the Avengers, she's smart, she's gorgeous, she's smart. And, you know, she's, you know, really caring, really nurturing. She's just a mix of all these roles. And on top of that, she's got brains, she's got brawn, she's got beauty. And that to me is the definition of sexy. And I mean, yeah, we still have these things going on where, you know, women in male gaze, you know, all they see is, you know, is she hot? Does she has a hot body? What skin tight, you know, how tight her costume is going to be. And yeah, how tight. And like, you know, we see her as like, God, she's gorgeous, she's smart, and she can fight. And that is what we see as sexy. And for me, you know, that needs to be, you know, we have to have more conversations about that, you know, how women can be multidimensional. They can be both beautiful, they can be both smart, they can be both strong. And there's nothing wrong if she's vulnerable too, like she shows her emotions, like she's sexy like that.
Yeah, it's like all encompassing. Like sexy doesn't just mean a physique. It could be a state of mind. It could be owning your shape. Yeah. Alicia, exactly. What about you? What do you mean by sexy? When what if someone calls you sexy, what do you want them to think? You know?
Well, I know for a fact, because of the nature of my work, I wear all sorts of clothes, right? It could be, you know, very revealing clothes. It could be skin tight clothes. It could be loose clothes. It could be Muslimah wear or whatever. And through and through, and this is not just me, but you can see across, you know, women who dress anyway, whether they are in a tudong or whether they show a lot of skin. Men find all sorts of reasons to find people sexy, women sexy. You know, we've seen all of these nasty comments on like, you know, hijabis or like girls who just minding their own business wearing stuff like this, and you get all of these really rude, crude comments of it being sexy. So I think there's one definition of sexy that exists where sexy means you turn me on, therefore you are sexy, right? And so if you're going to think about how do I want to be sexy, right? What do I want from myself to turn people on? For me personally, it's just how I carry myself, how anyone would carry themselves, how, you know, how I think, the things that I do. So again, like what Anne said, it encompasses actually a lot of things, but how do you actually take back that power is you just believe it, you know, it's almost like a manifestation into yourself. I know this sounds a little bit like hocus pocus, but for real, I mean, like, I'm a girl, I'm like twig skinny, you know, I don't have boobs. I, you know, have short hair most of the time. I don't usually appeal to, you know, this male gaze, but, you know, left, right, and center, I get people sending me these really weird, like, unsolicited messages. And I'm just like, I do not fit into this, you know, board, like this typical male gaze. What is it that makes it, you know, what is it that makes me so sexy to you? Right? And I think it's that. And obviously, a lot of people are scared of this energy. I mean, I like to call this, like, it's like the feminine prowess, you know, it's your own personal, your sense of how sexual or sensual you are to yourself. And I think it's about learning to control that, so you can choose who you show it to. I think it's a power to purposely seem unappealing to some, but you know that you are still. So for me, that is what sexiness is. Sexiness is a power that you can control, and you really can choose what parts about yourself would be sexy to other people. You know, I think it's all about that controlling for what you want.
Yeah, you're like speaking more from this perspective where like sexiness can be anything that you want it to be.
It is.
Yeah.
I personally think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a state of mind, and you just have to, you know, because while I understand that, like, yeah, sure, everybody wants to be sexy, everybody wants to feel sexy in this day and age, sure, but you know, there are still predators out there, right? There are still people you want to be sexy up until you're walking alone at night on the street.
Yeah.
You don't want to be sexy then. You know, then you just want to be as, you know, unattractive as possible. Nobody look at me. I just want to get home safe in one piece. You know, so that's why I think sexiness is something that we need to learn how to like turn on and turn off to protect ourselves as well.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. What about you, Melizarani?
Yeah, so I think the word sexy definitely is, it's important to understand that when it comes to reclaiming a word, like how we want to reclaim language, it's important to recognize how the male gaze has been fitted into very traditional constructs of the word sexy, especially in industries like the fitness industry. So how I mean this is if you take a look at how in the fitness world, how things are written, how languages are written, how classes are written, for instance, it's always been designed to tell women to lose weight. It has always been set up to tell women that their current self is not sexy and they need to get better. But then it seeps deeper and it sinks into a more sinister mechanism. For example, if you go to yoga class today, you would need to go buy some yoga pants. In Southeast Asia, all our yoga pants do not go past XXL. If you want to go into XXL, you need to flesh out a lot of money. This means the word sexy already excludes an entire bunch of women, class of women, from going and participating in fitness, which means you can't even go into your first step because you're already set up to fail. A lot of classes in fitness industries and organizations today do not cater to women of different abilities, different staminas, and therefore we're excluding a whole bunch of other women in partaking and enjoying their own sexiness. So until these things are rewritten, I think the word sexy has a long way of reclamation to go. We have a lot of work to do.
Like for me, like I come from a perspective where I do makeup content on Instagram, and we would assume like, oh, guys would like that would be considered sexy. But it's so funny because I would go like so crazy with my makeup, and then my younger brother would come into the room and look at me and he's like, yeah, you look so weird, you have too much makeup on. And it's so funny. It's like, is it for you? Do you think it's meant for you? It's not even meant for you. Like it literally is not. Makeup, like for me, people equate that to being sexy or appealing to men. But then again, like as a craft itself, just like fitness, if you want to work out and build the kind of body that you desire, that is sexy to you, it doesn't matter that it appeals to a male person or like has this male gazy thing. We start off these journeys as a girl, I feel like really hone into what would make us feel good through the eyes of another man. And I find that like a lot of to do with reclaiming the word sexy is just to realize that it's how we want to view ourselves. If I want to do eyeliner up to here and I think I look good, I can totally feel that way, and nobody needs to make me feel like bad about myself. But it's a good thing that Melizarani brought up about fitness, because, and I actually have a question to ask you. It is not only, I feel, that you go through I guess discrimination on one end where you're in MMA and it's a male dominated industry and you're fighting with men. I find that like when you've built the kind of body that you want, you end up also fighting with women, because women are like, oh, that's not even nice, or you're too buff or anything like that. So in your experience, there's always been like very traditional definitions or expectations of what a woman is supposed to be like. Have you ever sort of gone past it? I'm sure you have. And how have you succeeded in pushing that boundary for yourself?
Oh, well, yeah. It's interesting what you mentioned about like how, you know, I joined this sport. And of course, in order to be competitive, you know, our body evolved according to the sport. This is my theory, that our body tends to evolve with the sport that we partake. So for me, you know, I do a lot of wrestling, I do a lot of boxing, a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So naturally, my body developed into maybe some ways that may not be appealing to other women or men, not ladylike for sure. So there were even rumors that I was taking steroid, which obviously is not true. It's just my body developing with, you know, the amount of training that I have to go with, 6 hours, 7 hours of training, and naturally my body's just going to develop in that way. Aside from that, I mean, you know, you've got people coming to you saying, you know, oh, she's too tough to be, you know, to be pretty, or, you know, you look like a guy from the back. That's what I always get, you know, and either that, or there's no way that her body, because at the time when I started, I mean, right now MMA is really popular, but when I started, there weren't a lot of people training wrestling, or women basically weren't training wrestling. So it was really quite rare in our region, in Malaysia, to see women who do that sport and who build that kind of body, a wrestler's body. So when they saw, you know, I started training when I was like around 25, 26. So when they started seeing me train, and you know, my body naturally developed in a way as a result of my training. You know, people say I take steroids, people say I look like a guy, and
people were mad. People were mad because they couldn't be you, sis.
Exactly. I was like, you know, dude, I could beat you up. I could out wrestle you. Come and talk to that in my face, you know? And I'm like, whenever I have that conversation in my head all the time, I'm like, you go down the mat and you wrestle me and then you talk, you know? Because like people will be saying that all the time, because only, you know, at the time, not a lot of people do the sport that I do as a woman. And you see people come up to me, and after that, you know, they see how strong you are. People tend to then, women especially, I get this, you know, when I started my first pro fight in one championship, this was in 2013. It was so crazy that I had like men sending me messages of how much, you know, oh, you know, you're like this, just trolling over and over, even to the point of creating fake Facebook accounts. I would block one and then he would reappear and say said I had an affair with my coach, said so much other things. I was a hype train, just so much. And then on the other side, women coming to me, feeling my inbox with like how inspired them, you know, they wish they had the same courage as I did to step into the ring, to go into a fight, to do the sport that I do, wrestling with guys, train with guys. And, you know, it's just, you know, in my mind, I was like, you know, men are like this because they want to be me, you know. It's a controlling mechanism where they don't want other women to learn from me, to be inspired by me, so that they can do that.
Yeah.
You know, and I realized this because, you know, when women would say, oh, I want to join you train, and the guy would have a different kind of, you know, their boyfriend or their partner will have like this weird expression, like, no, you don't train with her, you know, I don't want to be, I don't know, whatever is running in his mind. But to me, it's a controlling mechanism. They just you know, they wish to be you. They wish to achieve the things that I have achieved, you know? And while the women out there, you know, are inspiring to see how they can actually, you know, do something much bigger. You know, that's how I kind of got into the sport. I wanted to do something more than what I was doing at the time. And I did it.
Yeah, I find it very ironic that like men sort of like, they look down on womanly qualities, calling it emotional. But then the moment you enter their space and you're like them, they're sort of threatened by it. They're like, oh, you can't. There's really such a specific way in women need to exist where you are not emotional and you're not all these weird like feminine qualities. But then when you enter the men's space, you're still sweet and you're still sort of beneath them. And there's like such a like delicate little box in which we have to fit in. And I'm so happy that you decided to be like, screw this, I'm just gonna do it because you are so inspiring. And like MMA,
I'm gonna do what I want to do. Yeah.
Yes, that's so right. Oh my gosh. And for you,
and I think it's and I think it's you know, it's really interesting. And what you were saying about how you would have, you know, both sort of women and men commenting about how your body should look like, you know, you being either too buff or too strong or whatever. And, you know, then you talking about people wanting to control. And it's actually, I feel like that aspect, that control aspect, that is something that really, really shows the patriarchy at work and how it has sort of poisoned women. And you can see the women who are products of, you know, like unfortunate products of having to deal with this. It's either from like family or from like a home setting where they are constantly told as means of controlling them, and then that kind of develops in themselves, and then they go out and they do it to other people. And like, let's just say, right, you take gender away, this is a control problem. This is a problem where people, humans trying to control other humans, and then it just gets worse for us because the patriarchy exists, and you know, women are the main victims of the patriarchy. So
I mean, for you too, Alicia, I'm sure you find that you have contrast on both ends. So as a Muslim woman, you coming and doing modeling and having to do your job well, which is to be open to any kind of experience that you do, I'm sure you do face sort of discrimination on both ends where women are also upset with the way you choose to represent yourself, as well as men. So again, when we come back to the idea of traditional expectations of women, I'm sure you've also broken through it. Do you have an experience in which you know, I'm sure these experiences are very difficult. And as you're pushing past these boundaries, you're feeling like maybe you're doing the wrong thing. But has there been maybe a time in which you push past it and you've succeeded, and you've gone with your gut and you're like, this is exactly where I'm meant to be?
I think my whole life is just be going with my gut and just kind of being like, oh, let's just try this. Well, I would have to say that I'm aware of my privilege, that I was the only girl in a family of 4 other boys. So my dad, I think, I think, I mean, I don't even think my dad ever had this like, oh, she's a princess. There was a little bit of this like, oh, you're a girl, you can't go out after a certain time. And then when my brothers were like my age at that time, then he would just be like, oh yeah, just go and do whatever. And then when I also really appreciate that my dad, as I was growing up, he sort of became a bit more of a feminist than he was before, just because I was this really uncontrollable, like crazy girl that just wanted to do things, and I always had an excuse and I always had an argument for things. And I guess, you know, parents, they love you, right? I mean, I know that there are some parents who are like, oh my God, you don't listen to me, I send you to sekolah pondok. But, you know, this is why I'm saying I'm privileged. My dad wasn't like that. You know, my dad was willing to have a conversation with his child, which not a lot of parents are willing to do, especially Asian parents, you know. And because of, I think, that journey, for me, just doing normal, like growing up stuff, right? Like my dad chose his words, you know, instead of, maybe when I was growing up, it was, oh, because you're a girl, you can't do this. But then when my brothers were, let's say 15, and then they wanted to go out, you know, and then I'd be like, how come they can go out and I couldn't? And then he'd look at me and he'd be like, because you look after them. So in a way, he was just getting out of it, I'm sure. But that was empowering, you know, in its own little ways. And like consistently, those things being said to you as you're growing up, you are given power, you know. And being in a industry, I mean, fashion is not so male oriented, especially here. That is basically all about a lot of it is women empowerment in fashion, at least here in Malaysia. And then, you know, my family kind of being like that, where I was, although I was a girl, I was head of, you know, the eldest sibling, head of the family. My whole life, for me, from my perspective, it was always this, like, there is no difference. If anything, I'm like a little bit better than you because I'm the big sister, you know, that. So I just kind of went through my life like that, you know, with that attitude. And whether it was dating or whether it was dealing with, you know, speaking to male clients or, you know, whatever, I brought that energy. And I understand that's why a lot of people don't like me. I understand that's why, like, my Instagram, if you look at my numbers, it's like 60% women, 30% or 40% men, or some ridiculous. Men don't find me appealing, I guess, to whatever level and whatever reason, but I don't care, you know, like, as everybody says all the time, we don't do things for men. You know, we do things for ourselves. Men and the patriarchy, they just get in the way. So that's why I said at the start, I think I am very privileged because my life has sort of been, maybe it was there, but just because it was in my peripherals, you know, maybe once or twice, it was like right in front of me. But I'm the kind of person who I would just be like, what the is your problem? You know, and then I never had to fit into a mold. I was never good with fitting into molds and things like that. So I never did. I just kind of like went for it. You know, you're talking about netizens online. People say all sorts of things about me. You know, they said all sorts of things to Anne. You know, I can't imagine the kind of sexism that, you know, Melizarani has to go through. And like this is, I'm not saying that it's better that, you know, maybe you're not always like on the face of everything you do, because writing is supposed to be a bit more objective, right? But there's still sexism in every industry for some reason, you know? So I do think that a lot of my gut feeling, it came from a very lucky background, and it came from a lot of confidence. So, you know, I can't take any credit for that, but I can definitely say, you know, when you want to have kids, or if you are a parent, or if you, you know, are, you know, a young girl, or even if you're older, you know, and you want to undo all of these damages that was done to you, you know, in your childhood or whatever, taking away your confidence, you said people telling you that you need to care about other people's opinions more than your own gut feeling, you know, just undo all that, because this comes back to, you know, what I said earlier about being sexy being your thing. Learn to listen to yourself. Because at the end of the day, if things work out, that's great. If they don't work out, you're going to be the only person that has to sit with yourself. If you listen to everyone else, you know, tak kisah lah, auntie, uncle, the boys, your mom who has her own, you know, history of having to deal with the patriarchy, you're going to listen to everyone else except yourself. You're going to be sitting there alone too. And those weren't even your final decisions.
I mean, Alicia, the thing that I loved about what you said was that you never necessarily went through this thing where you had to break out of traditional stereotypes. And the person that you brought up the most was your dad. And it's so interesting, it's so wonderful to know that like you had a really good sort of strong male support in your life that taught you really to not have any boundaries on yourself. That's really, really interesting.
And I think it's crazy because like I said, my dad is not like an outright, I'm pretty sure if I asked him like, are you a feminist? My dad would be like, oh no, what is this bullshit? Da, 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 da. Because he's like, my dad's old, my dad's almost 60. But I think from like my dad, him and I, we kind of, as I grew up, he just didn't want to hurt my feelings. You know what I mean? It wasn't this grand, like my dad was like, no, I'm going to raise my girl to be confident. That like, I don't think it was any of that. You know, that is the craziest part. That is why I feel like so lucky. And it's just simple. It's simple things and it's consistent things, you know, and that can make or break your confidence.
I mean, I think what you felt was like really unconditional love from your dad with no expectations, you know, and that's the thing that like
we fought so much. Like it was a process, you know. I make it sound all nice and everything, but like me and my dad, like he used to chase me around. Like we used to live in this house that had like a swimming pool, and we used to run around the pool, and he would like, you know, carry slipper lah, carry like chair, and then like, you know, and I'm like and then he's it was a whole journey. It was a whole process. But, you know, looking back and, you know, if I had to compare maybe like how I grew up versus how some of my other female friends, you know, who do not have this sort of view, or this sort of like strange confidence, or almost like smugness that I have about things. And I do think that it comes from that, because I was so heavily validated as a person. And I don't even think my dad did it because like, oh, she's the girl, she needs it. Nah, I think my dad was just like, okay, shut up, you have a point, kid, go. You know, I genuinely think it was just that.
Like for me, in my own experience with my family, I think my mom had very, very, very traditional expectations of me. So as you can see, I've got like a ton of piercings and I'm dyeing my hair like 6 different colors every other week. And it really affected how I felt about myself, because it always came down to the fact that I was never, not that I was never good enough, but there was only one kind of way that I could be with her for her to be able to fully love me, which is why I brought up the unconditional love thing. It was like, your dad and you might fight, but then he would love you unconditionally as who you are. Whereas I think I struggled with that growing up. I find that like there were a lot of conditions set on me about the kind of woman that I could be, and I was not fulfilling any of those things. And I felt like I had a lot of sort of friction with my mom because of it. So I want to turn this to you, Melizarani. Like for me, I struggled a lot as a Chinese girl, not fitting into this kind of box that my mom wanted me to fit into. And you wrote a book called Taboo about your representation as an Indian woman. So I'm sure you've had moments in which you've broken out of traditional Indian stereotypes for women. Could you speak more on that?
Sure. I think it's important to acknowledge that men become accidental feminists only when they have daughters. Women are always feminists, even when they don't realize it. And a lot of times mothers and daughters tend to have this tremendous friction. And I speak also from experience that, and sometimes I wonder, and this is a theory, this is not proven, but this is a theory, that sometimes mothers impose these ideas of being a woman as a result of the patriarchy that they have suffered and were unable to call out. And so they try to either protect their child, or they're either like, in a way, trying to make sure the child conforms to what they had to endure all their life. So it's kind of like this, it's a very strange dimension. And honestly, as I am not a mother myself, I'm sure Anne is the best person to kind of go at this. So so I'm going to leave that to Anne for sure. But I think as a daughter, this is a theory that I have with regard to mothers and fathers.
I agree with you.
Yeah. But I think on the subject of traditional constructs, it's important to you cannot talk about tradition in Southeast Asia without talking about taboos, and especially in Malay, Chinese, and Indian, and even in the Aboriginal constructs of religion and culture. There's so many types of expectations that come up when what a woman can and cannot do. It goes into simple things like a woman's place is in a kitchen, for instance, you know, or when a woman is going through womanly main things, she cannot partake in certain things. But when you look at that on the framework of literature, like on the basis of literature, Malaysia's national poet laureate for years and decades has only been Malay men. And only up until 2 years ago, we had our first wanita that was acknowledged can write poetry on a national level. And that is
what, 2019?
Yeah, I think it was 2019 or 2018. And like that's a long time. That's a long time of all Malay men coming in, you know, and like taking up space. So that's definitely one thing that, you know, that you constantly need to fight. But also for us, like for us individuals, if you take a moment after this, go to your bookshelf and just go through how many books do you own that are written by women? Because for a long time, the literary structures have always favored men. Quality in literature has always been equated to men. If you look at the textbooks that are being written and churned out by the English literature in Malaysia, how many of them are written by men? Like, women never write, is it? So it's so important to take note of these things and start changing them. So when I came into spoken word poetry, one of the things that I felt I started writing about was womanhood, Malaysia, and Indian identity, and how all of that kind of comes together. Because being a minority woman is not the same as being a woman. It's very different. There's a whole other list of things that we need to cover. Unfortunately, in literature, and even until today, there's so much trauma that comes out because no one was telling these stories for such a long time. So when women are finally given the stage, they're obligated almost to about their struggles. I would love for a woman panel to be about science fiction or poetry, and not just because I'm a woman, I am here. And these are some things that need to be present in the literary aspect of things. On a performance aspect of things, the word mouthy comes to mind. Women are always given this word mouthy when that we use our mouths and we have so many opinions and thoughts, and like this is something that really has to change, because if we're not talking about it, who is going to talk about it? Who can I rely on to talk about it? So many times we have to do the work ourselves. We have to make our own platforms to stand on it, and it's quite tiring lah. So these are some things that definitely comes up in language. And I think one of the easiest or simplest ways we can start breaking out of that patriarchal of language is checking the way we define ourselves and the way we talk about women by ourselves, the way we write women as well, when we are given the pen and when we are given the stage, how we represent and how do we acknowledge a woman. And of course, as I say this, while all of us here are very privileged and we've worked really hard to take this stage, there's still an entire group of women that are hardly given space during International Women's Month, which are queer women and trans women, completely excluded from the conversation. So there's so much work that we need to do, but I think men definitely have to play a role in these things. Simple things. If you are in an all-male panel, gentlemen, then someone needs to be able to step aside and say, hey, why are we not having a woman in here? If it's in a boardroom setting, if it's in a classroom setting, we need to uphold and showcase and amplify women's voices right from school to this level as well. Yeah.
I think for me, sorry, I think I have a question. So as a writer, right, do you personally think that we don't have enough women writers, for example, because they are not given the opportunity, or because women are afraid to start?
Okay. So I would say it's a chicken and egg situation for what you've just said, but also it's more of the former. So for instance, there are so many women writers, so many women poets in Malaysia, and even in the region in Southeast Asia. Unfortunately, they are not given the opportunity. If you look at anthologies and submission calls for writing, only once a year during March, all the submission calls will come and like, we want women writers. Then June never asked me. November, you cannot ask me, is it? So it's important to recognize that we are still being pigeonholed as women writer, when in actual fact, we need to be level.
You guys are just writers.
Yeah. Just writers. And because of this gendered way of looking at quality writing, a lot of opportunities are not being grasped and not being given to them intentionally. It's always like, there's a short list of 5 men. If all of them cannot make it, we'll call a woman, and that needs to change. That really needs to change.
I mean, for me, right, Melizarani, for you to get to this point where you understand how we are sort of oppressed by a society, not even by men in general, but the fact that we are
the whole
society. Yeah, the whole system is like already imbalanced against us. But you found your voice and you found your place and you want to represent yourself well. But I guess for all of us, in fact, for us to get to this point where we can feel confident and we own who we are today, we had to go through some points in which, like, I suppose we were looked down upon as women, or that they made you feel like you were not enough just because you're a woman. And if you could just share maybe a specific experience in which somebody has made you feel this way, or
there's so many I cannot count. you see I'm an Indian woman. I am also a dark-skinned Indian woman. There are so many walls I have to climb before someone rejects me for being a woman. There's so many things, like, and I think that recognizing those walls and scaling them has always been the most tiresome thing to do. but that I've continuously done. So for instance, when you look at, when I was publishing my book, right? My book Taboo has I just don't have it with me right now. It's over there. But like the cover of the book is a woman, and it's a woman's face, and she's got her finger on her lips, and it's and I was told time and time again by many men who had opinions about art and book covers that if you put a brown woman on a cover of a book in Malaysia, it will not sell, because it must be a hijab woman, or it must be a man that is recognized, or something like that. Or, you know, you put a picture of a tree, it'll probably sell, okay? And I was very adamant about this, because you don't see this. One of the things that are that's very important in literature, I feel, is that even on a simple poster or a simple cover of a book, if a young girl is walking, she needs to be able to see herself on that page. She needs to be able to see herself and recognize that, oh, I also can be here. I am also represented. This person looks a bit like me.
Like me.
Yes, and that needs to be continued. So it's it's a continuous work in progress, and it's not one instance and then you overcome. I'm still overcoming it because I'm still alive, and I think it's gonna get worse or maybe better, you know. But I think on the subject of us being here, I think it's also very, very beautiful to acknowledge that yes, we worked really hard to get here, but we're also paying it forward and making space for other women to come on board. And that is work that we are always doing, and all of us here are doing. And I would love to see more of that. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, like there's one whole side of it where it's like you're sort of discriminated on a woman as a woman, but that is almost like the least of, it's like the lowest. Yeah. And then like there's so many other things.
Must go through
So many walls.
That's why intersectionality is important, ladies. And thank you. You guys have done a good job here, Babel.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that we covered as many angles as possible of every single person's struggle, because being a woman is one thing, but then being a Chinese woman, a Muslim woman, an Indian woman, a Malay woman, there's so many layers of it that we have to sort of go through together. So yeah, for Alicia, for you, I find that like a struggle could be sort of like online hate, because like you and me, we both have social media profiles, and as well, we really, really put ourselves out there, which also means that we have to be open to sort of people criticizing you or sending you explicit photos about things that you don't want to see. So has there been a time where like that online hate has sort of gotten to you and you feel like, oh, so down about it, or mainly from a point of view where they make you feel like you're not good enough as a woman, you know?
Oh my God. So I'm just going to go very quickly on this, okay? But actually, my worst time ever that I'm having on social media right now, but, you know, it's bad for like my own personal identity, but it doesn't actually hurt me, is the fact that I have been taken a lot more seriously ever since I married my husband. Like I understand, yes, I achieved a lot of things without him, and you know, before I met him, blah 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 blah. But you can see this massive shift in the attitude of people online. I'm just gonna single them out, mostly Malays. You know, they're and I understand this. It's a cultural thing. I'm not saying that it's okay, but it's a big cultural thing, you know. It's a big religious thing as well, depending on how religious and how pious or how traditional you are about these things. That there are a lot of people who just really, really, really love me now because I'm married, and one of the things, you know, I had really weird, like people calling me a hoe and things like that. I'm just like, yeah, whatever, like, you know, okay. But the thing that really gets me is when some people were saying things like, oh, you know, Alicia Amin pun boleh dapat jodoh, and I'm like, what do you mean Alicia Amin pun? I feel like, I mean, like, I'm not up my own ass, but I'm like, bloody hell, I've achieved so many things. I think I am number one on the list compared to all of y'all. You know, you know how I mean it, right? But like, I'm not sitting behind a keyboard talking shit about people. Obviously, I would have a better chance at finding my jodoh than you guys. But in my mind, I'm like, why? Why do people feel like it's so unbelievable for someone like me to find love? And, you know, I guess the fact that he's a doctor, because I don't know why people like doctors so much, but you know, but you know what I mean. You know, Melizarani is like laughing a bit too hard here right now. But you know, and then like that whole thing for me is it makes me feel a little bit like, I mean, my husband has literally just like appeared. Like we didn't really showcase our relationship. I mean, we did, but it wasn't like, you know, it's not like we did like an Alexis Ren and Jay Alvarez where we shared our whole relationship and things like that. Like they saw him pop up bits and pieces here and then. And the moment we got married, everybody's like, oh, he's going to be the one to lead you to Jannah. He will change you. He will, he is the reason that you will go to heaven. And I'm like, yo, you guys don't even know this guy though. You know, he could be worse than me. He could be like, you know what I mean? And that's 100% perception. And that is the perception that bothers me the most. I feel like the people who like look at me or look at women, you know, who like, let's say Anne, for example, you say people looked at you, they saw your muscles and then they put two and two together. Oh, she's strong, therefore not womanly. Or like looked at me and be like, oh, she tattoos. Okay, she weird. She not attractive. Okay, fine. You're looking at us as an individual a bit, judging, sure, but there is some individualism to those judgments. You know, you're looking at me and you're making a judgment about me. Fine. But then this one, you don't even know my husband. What? Because he's a guy? Because he's a man? He's a doctor? He's done? Like,
so
what fuck?
Would you say that like your value as a woman has been raised just because now you belong to someone else? Okay.
Because of who I married. And I know I can't help this, but at the same time, I feel like I know I can't help this, and this is not my fault, and this is not his fault. You know, obviously, if we're gonna take society and everything away, like I love him so much. He's a great person. That's why I married him, right? You take all of these ridiculous things away, but there is a little bit of that struggle, you know. I mean, I am someone who I really, really care about my work, and I really, really care about how I view myself, you know. And I think everybody, especially women who work very hard to achieve the things that they achieve, we tend to feel a little bit like, why are you fucking stealing my thunder? You know what I mean? And it's crazy because I have to keep that in mind all the time. Like sometimes when I'm mad at him, I'm just like, wait, is this just your own like personal insecurities because he's a guy? And like, are you just really about to fuck this up because you cannot control the perception of society? You know, and those are little struggles that I have. And that's crazy because like, I didn't even do anything wrong. Why am I fighting myself here? So in a way, while I'm empowering myself, when that process of empowerment isn't then, I wouldn't say isn't validated, but like, you know, he comes into my life and when you're in a public platform, people take that away from you, you know, and like this, and he didn't even do it himself. He had absolutely nothing to do with it. And then you end up battling yourself to not fight with the guy. Yeah. And I mean, like, I don't know if, you know, Anne, you went through this because, you know, you're married and you have children, but, you know, for me, this is a very like place, but I think that is the hardest part. Like online shit, that is the thing that bothers me the most. Yeah.
That is so interesting. That is such a crazy perspective to have, I find, because you would be like, oh, it's because of the online hate, it's made me feel bad and people like don't respect me as a woman. But I can see that like even though people are praising you, even though people are saying good things about you, it can really be like, oh my god, it reveals to you almost this whole system. Yeah.
It's like a double-edged sword, you know.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. So for you, Anne, I'm sure breaking traditional stereotypes, but any point of time in which like people have put you down for being a woman, and I'm sure you can go on for like an hour about this.
I could, but yeah, I mean, just playing up like Alicia's story, and it's so interesting because, you know, all I could hear is like society expectation. You know, even when I was fighting, people be like, oh, you know. Again, I started fighting or competing MMA. I was in my mid-20s. I was already working a corporate job, risked my future by like quitting my job because I went for something that I wanted, which was to start in my career, my MMA career. I mean, some people don't even think it's a career, but whatever. And then, you know, I retired in 2018. And then, you know, I got married 2016. So the thing is like, no matter how much a woman has, you know, work herself up that ladder, you know, break the glass ceiling, whatever, people still going to put that value of, is she married? Does she have kids? Like all those society expectations, like no matter, regardless of whether it is her decision to, whether she wants to get married or not, they're still going to attach that as an achievement.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit. Sorry, they don't give a damn shit about like whether she's a CEO, whether she was on Time magazine, whether she was a Time Next Generation leader, or she's achieved so much, or she's a global global model, international level model, or a award-winning writer. They're not gonna give a shit about that. They're always gonna attach your value to that societal expectation of, is she married? Checked. Oh, okay, now we're gonna love her because her values, increase. Now she's okay. When is she gonna have a kid? Does she have?
And
that
how
motherly
old is she when she has kids?
Exactly. Or how old when she got married? They're always gonna attach that. And then if you get married past the age of 40 or have kids, then they say, oh, it's impossible, the kid's gonna be like this. Oh, she got married at 40. Oh, she was probably desperate. They'll always have that sentiment, that stigma, all that. A woman's, I don't know if this is happening globally, but definitely in Asia, this is something that we still live with even in this today's age, 2021. A woman's value is always attached to, whether she's single, married, a mother. And sometimes being mother doesn't really mean your value is gonna increase. It might might decrease, or that's the thing. Your value is always attached to that. And regardless whether a woman is a CEO, and I've had someone, okay, the most effed up thing that someone would have come to me, because my husband, I knew him before I started competing in MMA, right? So he's not someone who is famous. He's someone, I met here in Sabah. I'm based here in KK. So
Internet.
Oh no.
No, and
okay, but to quickly jump on what she's saying as she's like reconnecting and coming back, I
made a name for myself, and he he has his own.
Oh no.
Hold on.
Your internet.
Okay.
Okay, so you were talking
okay.
about your husband. Yeah, you just started.
Yeah, you met him in Sabah.
Yeah, so I met him in Sabah, and he's doing his own thing, and I made a name for myself. So, and now we're married. I mean, we've been married since November 2016, and because I'm an athlete, especially an athlete in mixed martial art, people would say, oh, did she beat you up? Or it's not his fault, it's not my fault. And they would always attach that, my brand as an athlete or as a martial artist, and they would like say, oh, I bet Anne beats up her husband at home. I bet she's too bossy. Now I own my own company. I'm a CEO of my own company. My husband and I were in business together, and they'll be like, oh, Anne's a bit bossy, because I work hard for everything that I have now. And my husband gets me. We're both, we've been business partners for the longest time. And, we work so well together, and I still can't shake off till today, people calling me, oh, she's much more bossy than her husband, especially because she's a fighter. I bet she beats her husband at home.
Wow.
I still get that.
And
you know what? Sometimes
this is so crazy. This is about something like what you said, Melizarani. You were talking about controlling. Like the narrative of how people write about women is so important. So how people speak about women also, this
Exactly.
is
Yeah, I wish someone asked Mike Tyson, oh, does he beat his wife at home? Because then we would have achieved Me Too a long time ago if we started asking those questions.
Yeah.
It's so strange how the aggressor in the normal context is never questioned, but the moment women achieve strength in a physical, tangible way, it's suddenly like questioned immediately.
Yeah. Like nobody ever asks my husband if he like performs surgeries on me for fun at home. You know what I mean? Like come on.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that when Maybelline and I were sort of writing these questions down, and I was like, oh, I'm sure that if you go through a high point in your life, you would have gone through a low point. And I would have assumed that, like, for example, Alicia would have talked about like online hate, and then Ed would have spoken about like what it is to be like challenged as an MMA fighter as a woman. But it's so crazy to me that you guys are bringing up things that I didn't even think about, which is about the fact that like before you can even speak of any of these things, you need a family or you need a man to sort of be able to up your value as a woman. And I just find that like I thought the answers would be really straightforward, and it's just been so interesting that like we sort of arrive at the same point, you know.
Okay. Well, I do not think that we need a man or we need family per se, but that like how society views you, especially in the day of like social media and things, right? That will overshadow what you actually achieve. I mean, like I have been on magazine covers, I have, you know, worked with LV, Chanel, all of these crazy brands. None of the tabloids were writing about that shit. You know what I mean? All they care about is me getting married. So I can't help that. You know, that is not like, you know, that's not, it's like, you know, Anne's situation with people saying that she beats up her husband. She can't help that. That's not, you know, that's not anybody's fault, as in ours or our partners or our work, right? It's society. And so that for me, this actually is just a show and tell of how much, no matter what you do as a woman, society will overshadow your actual narrative with things. Because what we're frustrated about is that this is the narrative. Yeah. What about all of the other things? Like if I were a guy, they would be writing about, you know, me walking this show, me doing this, me working with LV, you know, me doing with all, like whatever. They would be writing about those things. But no, instead they're writing about everything else that isn't my actual work.
I mean, for me, it's like when we talk about society as a whole, and this was something that I really, really, really wanted to touch upon, because like I said, there's so many already podcasts and talks and books out there about empowering women. But when it comes to society, I also feel at some point it is a double-edged sword, where society has traditional, really toxic expectations of women, but it also imposes the same sort of expectations on men. And of course, it's nowhere near as bad as ours, but I still feel like they exist. And for us to even talk about empowering women or talk about feminism or equality, I feel like another topic that we do need to talk about is actually men and the kind of toxic expectations of them, where they're not allowed to cry, they're not allowed to be emotional, they don't have paternity leave to come and help you out. Because it's not seen as a job that they should be doing, or even the fact that like they are expected to earn money and take care of the family. And so a topic that I really want to get into is actually also, like, now that we've spoken about all of this, I feel like the other side of the coin is how do we also help men, like in our positions of power as women, where we get our maternity leaves, where we are taken seriously when we are upset at work, or that our emotional needs are met between female friends, where they're not given that same space as men. Have you ever sort of helped a guy friend out, push past these stereotypes, or in your experience sort of help push past all these narratives for men as well? Let's go Melizarani.
Okay, so this is a very fascinating question that I acknowledge has its merit in all its means and all its intentions. However, I am going to say men can take a number. The other side of the coin of women is not men. It is not. If women had years and decades of work to do to get to where they are, I'm very sure a man can pick up a book or two and start learning how to uphold and learn how to be vulnerable and do these things. Having said that, it is very, very important, and I want to take this moment to acknowledge this. Women have continuously, throughout time, conducted unpaid emotional labor for men. Think about all your guy friends and how they only talk to their girlfriends about their problems when it's emotions. Everything else, they won't call you to McDonald's, is it? So that's another one. Think about your mother and your grandmother, how they are always the shoulders to cry on at the worst parts of grief and nowhere else. And so when we start talking and thinking about how men are the other side of the coin, what we're missing the point is women have been doing these things. all the time throughout. Like we have been the shoulder to cry on. Every time a man talks about a woman in popular culture or even in celebrity, it's always about how she was there for him. I mean, it would be
the role of the nurturing,
exactly.
loving, supportive.
Yes. Women are always put into this position of being the mothers of this that they need, and that's how they've been primed. They've always been designed to take care of the man, and it's a very it needs to stop at some point, and it needs to take a step back. Yes, men have difficulty acknowledging their vulnerabilities. They have a lot of work to do, especially men who are queer and men who are gay, and they are struggling as well. However, there is work with 2021. There is work that can be done on your own. And then the question comes up as, how can women support you on your journey towards attaining better self-care? That is a question I would love to answer. That is a question that I would love women to start acknowledging, that let them do the work first, and then we come in and assist, you know? And I think one of the ways that we start doing that is looking at our brothers and our fathers and everything, and understanding that they need to get on board with feminism in order to help themselves. The common misconception is that feminism was designed for women to uphold women, and that's not the case. Feminist construct assist all of society and help women and men and people who are of all kinds grow and expand, because feminism supports the individual and understands that everybody needs to win together. So these are some ways that, you know, men can, like, we can assist men in this journey.
Yeah, like for me personally, I like feel like you're absolutely right in terms of the fact that like women still need to like a lot more attention needs to be focused on more women-centric issues first before we can even talk about equality and giving equal attention to men and sort of pushing them up as well, because we're already at such a disposition compared to where they come from. But like for me personally, I feel like, so this is just something that's happened to me, but I am really, really successful. I work 3 jobs, and I've never been placed, like no expectations from me in terms of being successful had ever been placed on me. So I have always been free to sort of go and do whatever I want. And now I'm like really financially stable, which is something I'm very happy and proud of. But when I started dating my boyfriend, he was sort of had this whole thing where he had to take care of the wife and he had to be the one who paid for everything for me. And he came from this place. And there's 2 ways in which I feel like men can sort of express this. It's either in a very egotistical way, or in an insecurity, which of course ego is both, right? Ego is both insecurity and ego, and insecurity is like just, so what my boyfriend suffered from was not an egotistical way of feeling, putting me down about it. He was always so happy with my successes. He would support me in anything that I did. He was there for me no matter what. But at the end of it all, he felt the need to still be better than me because of the way that his mom used to tell him, you need to take care of your wife, you need to pay for your wife, you cannot let your wife do this for you, blah, 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 blah. And in the end, like, I guess the small thing that I did for my boyfriend was ended up like trying to get him to understand that we're equals. And like, okay, maybe I pay a flight for you to London now, and then 5 years later when you earn money, you fly me to London, right? So it's like, it's a give and take thing. It doesn't mean that just because I'm better than him or I'm more financially stable than him now, that this is always going to be the way, and he needs to feel bad about it. And so that's small, it's a small step for me personally that I took to sort of shed this toxic idea that men are supposed to take care of you, and that it is only going one way. And it's not like, why can't I take care of you for like the next 5 years, and then maybe you take care of me, and then the roles sort of shift and move very organically between the both of you, depending on the kind of partnership that you're looking for. So yeah, for Anne, you are married as well with a husband and you got children and stuff. Have you ever been through a point where you realize that there are toxic sort of expectations of men as well, and if you've ever helped someone get through it?
Well, it's interesting, I was just listening to Melissa, talking about, men can sort out their problems first, because it's true. We are still dealing with so many, issues that until today, that it's, that has to do with, our female issues. And even then, with all the opportunities, there's a lot of work done. I mean, let's give credit to that, to the both men and women, especially, who has been, creating these conversations and, fighting for the change. You know, there's even men on board. I'll give credit to that. But then there's to the point that there's so much noise going on about how, you know, oh, women are still making noise, although they're given that so much opportunity already, you know. And, you know, talking back to, I think you did mention, Melissa, about how, you know, after like, say, you know, a selection is being done and after filtering, and then, you know, just to, then
women.
only the last, and then they'll only choose a woman, you know. But then it's interesting how, you know, these are still being done and still we face the same issues and men are still making noise about it. So yes, we still all have a lot to work on, and so men can actually deal with their own issues. But talking about like you know, helping out a friend, you know, in my environment, in the sport that I do, I work, of course I train a lot with men, and I'm just so blessed that I come from a team, and it was my coach who encouraged me to compete, who actually gave me the opportunity, you know, to bring me on and say, hey, you know, let's start competing, you know, get serious about this. And I'm so lucky that there are other men as well, you know, within my team who, some of them, not all of them, some of them have really helped me throughout my career. And my husband has been very supportive. But yeah, I can see, you know, being married, you know, my husband's the kind that, you know, he was raised to, he has sisters, and of course he's got brothers, and they were raised to do like housework and stuff, you know, to be equal. So they're all equal. So that's how it is in my home, where, you know, my husband does the housework as well. He never pressures me to do it. We do it together. I mean, even right now we run a business together, where both of us are partners. But, you know, taking back to how people were saying, you know, she's a fighter, she's much more stronger than him. You know, I feel for him because, you know, he's supposed to be seen as the leader of the family, the one, you know, that's what society expects out of men. Be the provider, be the leader, like in Islam, be the imam. He's a convert. He's a, you know, he's a really like shy, nice guy. And, you know, again, like he didn't really, I mean, he's just leading his own life. So, you know, I want to do the things that I want to do. I fight. He supported me through that. You know, I want to build my company. That's, he supported. And next I want to go into acting, and he's supporting me with that. And it's sad that, you know, but he doesn't show it. He doesn't show that, you know, he's facing that, you know, some people might text him, oh, you know, she's doing way better than you. And I feel for that for him. And I, of course, don't rub that in his face. Of course, you know, I have so much respect for him. You know, it's, again, we're both in this together. And yeah, but I haven't really had any friends who really come up to me and, you know, seriously, like have had those issues. But I think so far in my life right now, as I'm facing, is definitely, you know, my husband, who he's facing all this. He's facing what, you know, society's perception of, you know, he's supposed to be the leader, but then, you know, my name is somewhat, you know, much more popular than his, or, you know, people see him as an inferior, like, you know, he's
yeah, because of society.
Yeah, because of society, you know.
Like,
and
it's not your fault, it's not his fault.
Yeah, it's not his fault, it's not my fault. And, you know, it's I feel for that for him, and I always bring him up as an equal. We are equals, in fact.
Yeah, I actually, you know, when you bring that up, and Nicole, I just wanted to clarify something very quickly. When we talk about assisting men and emotional labor that women do for men for all of time, right? It's important to, when you think about helping them, it needs to be a combination of re-educating and negotiating. It's not a transaction, because so oftentimes it's always seen as, oh, if you assist them emotionally, then they're going to assist you financially, or they're going to do and like wash dishes from time to time. And that's not equal. That's not enough. Assisting them is teaching them that there's so much work that they need to do and we need to do. And coming to that same level of understanding that assists everybody. Otherwise, it's going to be a transactional process, and we're never going to break out of the cycle.
Yeah, I think it's important we change the narrative. Yeah, of like, you know, the kitchen work. It's not the wife's responsibility. You know, we live in the same house. We have the same kid. it's both of our responsibility. I think, you know, this is what we're still facing again in the patriarchal control, and unfortunately
No
women
internet.
have this same, you know, who succumb to that, you know, they spread it, you know. It's like, oh, you know, you are meant to be in the kitchen. Yeah, you no, don't let him wash the dishes. That's your job. No, that's what we need to change. It's an equal
mean,
responsibility.
For me,
It's
it's
your
more
house as
like,
much as
I
mine. It's your
completely
kid as
agree.
much as mine.
Yeah, I completely agree with this changing the narrative thing, because I mean, at first, Melissa, when you were like, oh, you know, we shouldn't like help them, in my mind, I was like, okay, yes, you have your points. And then when you brought back up the re-education, and I'm like, yes, because that I agree. I am always there for my male friends and my husband to whatever capacity that I can, that does not burn or tire me out.
Yeah.
But the second the second it gets a bit like, this is so ridiculous, I'm like, look, here's my therapist's number.
Yes.
Maybe you should work out those issues first with a therapist, with a professional, someone who you can pay to do these things, because that's what they are meant to do. And they're so much better than me at these things, you know? And then after that, it's like what you said, it's re-education. And it's very important to actually teach boys, young boys, you know, and especially if, you know, partners, if you guys want to have children, how to speak about women, you know. I have a cousin in Singapore who, you know, I really look up to, and I think she's doing a fantastic job at raising her son, and she's a very respectful parent. And, you know, her son is like this, like 4 or 5 years old little toddler, and he's such a nice, respectful little boy that, sure, he has child tantrums, you know what I mean? But the way she raises him is that there isn't this male female allowance bias. There's this like, okay, well, this is a child, you know, this child is going through something. I'm not going to excuse him, or I'm not going to punish him for being too emotional or blah, 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 because this doesn't match the gender. You know, it's a very, I think in that way, it's very important to get your like husband or your partner or whatever on this. And also to a certain extent, there is this level of like my husband and his friends, they can be quite like jokers, and like, you know, like they're boys, they're really like boys, they have fun, they make really stupid jokes. And sometimes, especially when we first started dating, there is this slight, you know, because you want to be with someone, right? You're like, oh, should I be like the cool girl? But you can still be a cool girl, and you can just kind of be like, yo, that was too much. And then when they be like, oh, why are you so sensitive? And then I'm like, would you like if people said that kind of shit about you? They'll be like, oh, it's a joke. And then I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, you can make other jokes. You know, do you not have any other jokes that don't attack people?
When people
is
say
that the quality? Yeah, is that the quality of your comedy?
I
You know,
always
like-
say that like a joke is only when two people are laughing.
Yes.
So if one person is laughing, it's not a joke, you know? So
Yeah.
that's something that I feel like everybody should understand.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, why are you being so sensitive? It's just a joke. It's like, if I'm laughing, it's a joke. If the both of us are laughing, it's a joke. But if you're laughing on your own and I'm not laughing, it's not a joke, you know? But go ahead, Alicia.
Yeah, no, but that is it, you know. So in that sense, although it's not exactly emotional labor, you know, to kind of sit there and baby people, doing that, calling people out on the spot, you know, participating in stopping, you know, in conversations, saying that this is not right, this is wrong. Whether it's anything, it could be about sexism, it could be about racism, you know. And honestly, for me, it's like, if you are a group of friends and you're like a close group of friends who are like making fun of whatever, like, alamak, you can't stop people, right? But if these people are willing to make jokes like that in front of people that they barely even know,
Yes.
what are the chances that they practice these things that they joke about, or they believe these things that they joke about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's also recognizing that.
Yeah, because a lot of time when we talk about women uplifting men or women helping men grow, whatever, in that narrative, it always seems to come down to cutting them slack. And
Yeah.
that's not what we want.
Not-
You don't want to do that.
That is not at all.
We need to recognize that helping them is a lot of, like, 80% of the work is on their end. Like,
Yes.
they need to catch up, you know, and then we can help you come and get to the last mile.
Yeah.
Or
For
get
sure.
on the first mile. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, in
I
my
have
own...
this, oh, sorry, last one, okay, then I'll be quiet. I have
okay.
this, I have this really, you know, this really interesting perspective that somebody actually pointed this out to me, and then I kind of went, oh, but see, women for their whole lives, our whole lives, from maybe the ages of, depending on when you get your period and you start developing your boobs, right? Let's say 9, from the age of 9 to like 15, 16, depending on your body. From that age, you're already told, you know, be careful, you know, don't wear this, don't do that, be careful of this, protect your body, protect yourself. We are always called out. We are called out for things, right? And through adversity or whatever, we still have it pretty hard, right? And I understand why some people who are, you know, against feminism, they have this perspective of like, oh yeah, you know, but it's hard for everybody. But yeah, nobody's saying that it's not hard for men. What we're saying is that it's harder for women because of these certain things. You know what I mean? So it's always imagine what you have and then having to worry about this, right? So one of my friends, you know, who was kind of, I wouldn't say anti-feminist, but he was just like, oh, you know, we can all just like be nice to each other. And, you know, the kind of people who don't want to put labels on things, but then they mean well. So I was just like, okay, I'm just going to do this exercise with you. You, like, your shirt needs to be a certain way. Just a certain way, okay? It just needs to be slightly folded like that all the time. Okay, for this entire amount of time that we're hanging out, it has to be like that, right? And I will tell you every time that it's not, right? And after a while, he was like, this is so fucking annoying. And I'm like, exactly. It's like that. There are so many things that women have to deal with that are so unnecessary, that's so stupid. Mm-hmm. And sure, you can just ignore it if you want to, but there's always going to be some motherfucker somewhere reminding you of these things, you know? And that's it. And that is what, you know, calling out men, it's annoying. I'm so fucking sorry. I'm so sorry you can't make that sexist joke. I am so sorry for you.
Yeah, you know, when we talk about these things, we talk about men versus women, but it's actually not as simple and basic as that. You know, what essentially the questions need to be is a series. So if we're assisting a man or a woman or a person in general, we need to start checking privilege first before we even offer help. We need to find out how much, you know, are you financially privileged? Do you come from a race that is downtrodden, that is seen as a minority? Are you not getting the basic opportunities? Do you come from a family that is broken or unable or dysfunctional that cannot assist you in your growth? These are the questions that need to be asked, and they are not gendered. They apply to both men and women. So when it comes to uplifting, it needs to come from this place of understanding where they're at first in order to help them get to where they want to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very true. I find that, like, in the end, like when Alicia was talking about how like our lives are harder first, our problems are more difficult first, I remember this quote of people talking when the Black Lives Matter came up, and they used this really funny analogy, but it's like, we have a bunch of houses, and one of these houses are on fire, and we're saying, let's give attention to this house that's on fire. And everyone's like, yeah, but we have to give equal attention to take care of all the houses. But we're like, yeah, I get it, and I know that it's important to take care of everyone's house, but this one is on fire and we need to deal with this one first. And I find that that's the way that people view any kind of issue, race issue, or even a gender issue. It's like we're trying to pay attention to something that's been a pain point for women for many, like thousands and thousands of years, and they're saying, oh yeah, but we also have to pay attention, like equal attention to men. And I find that that's the issue. It's like, no, we got to solve the thing that's the most urgent first, and then we can sort of go and like do everything else once this problem is sort of resolved. But like for me, like, thank you so much for bringing up this whole thing about re-education. I feel like it is very, very important. And ultimately, I think when it comes to men and women, especially in relationships, I find again that there are no roles that are gendered. If a woman wants to be in the kitchen and she wants to take on a traditional housewife role, it is absolutely up to her to do so as well. It is just what fits the partnership, what makes sense for the partnership. I've got friends who have, like, well, like me, are extremely empowered as women who sort of like are financially stable, are very emotionally supportive for their partners. But then I also have other friends who like prefer a submissive role, are a little bit more quiet, and they prefer to stay at home, do the housework, and sort of leave it up to the men to earn or like earn money or whatever. And I find that like any kind of woman has a place in any kind of relationship to a man, and there's no one way for a woman to be, you know.
You just need to find the right partner that will allow that, you know, like don't go and be some independent woman who like needs to conform to a guy that doesn't appreciate your independence. Honey, go find yourself someone who likes you for you.
And like
That's
if
very
a woman
important.
if a woman wants to go down a traditional sort of more feminine role, it has no narrative. There is no implication that she's a more like she's more woman than people who don't do that. You know what I mean? It's more like we should approach every topic objectively. It's like objectively, do you like to clean? Do you like to, you know, sort of cook food? Okay, then you get the job. Objectively, do I like to clean the dishes? If I like it, I get the job. And there's no genders that are tied to any of these roles. It's just whatever makes sense for your partnership with your partner, I suppose. Okay, now we come down to the last question. We've spoken about so many things today. And I find that the people who are watching this, or especially me when I watch podcasts, I want to be able to take away something from the end of the whole thing so that I can remember this one thing. And I want everyone who's watching today to remember you guys by one specific thing. So Melizarani, if you could sort of give advice to your younger self about something actionable, something that someone can take away and apply it right now, what would you say?
I would tell my younger self to question everything. Never take anything as it is, and never accept anything as the way it needs to be or should be. Question it, understand how to ask a question in the most effective way, and also recognize that not everybody, and sometimes we just don't have all the answers, but the value is in the question. That is what I would say to my younger self.
Nice. And Osman, what would you say to your younger self, or actionable piece of advice that you can do right now?
I love that what Melissa is saying, and I agree with that. You know, if I were to meet my younger self, I would say don't take things at face value. You know, again, question whether it be a, you know, someone throwing you a question or a rejection. You know, is this person saying that at a standpoint where they feel that they can't be that you want to be? You know, you want to be a fighter, or you want to be a writer, you want to be a model, and when you say, you know, you just want to ask a friend, or I mean, even your mom, sometimes, you know, the person closest to you, you know, they're not you, and they might say, oh, you know, you shouldn't do that because I don't think you could be that, I don't think you would excel in that. Don't take that as face value. Always question it. You know, at what angle are they giving me advice? You know, do I really want this? You know, always, like Melissa say, learn how to ask the right questions. Never take things at face value. And yeah, I mean, really embrace the whole experience, be it failure or anything that you encounter, and always keep on learning.
All right, so question everything. Alicia, your advice for your younger self?
My advice for my younger self, if I could go back and I could look her in the eye, I would say, you're doing a great job, sweetie.
Aww.
Whatever it is you're doing, you know, no matter, like, I know how much you're going to fuck up. I know how much you're going to mess up. I know all of the things that you're going to like screw up monumentally, all of the things you're going to lose, all of the pain, but just do it. Just go through it. You do not need to protect yourself from experiences. You do not need to protect yourself from the world. Okay, sure. The fear of getting like raped, murder, killed, that's obviously like, you know, valid, right? But I mean, beyond, let's not talk about the super sinister stuff, but just living life. Sorry, I'm like losing it already.
It's fine, go ahead.
Yeah, but just like life itself, like there is absolutely no mistake that will, I don't know, what is the stuff that people like to say, maruah lah, your dignity,
your honor.
Yeah, what is that? Does honor pay my bills? Is honor gonna put me to sleep at night? No, just go. You're doing fine. Experience everything you need to experience. You know, yes, Melizarani and you guys are so right. Don't ask questions. I mean, don't stop asking questions. I was a young kid who never stopped asking questions anyways. She wouldn't stop even if you asked her to. So yeah, you're doing fine, sweetie. And this is to every girl, I think, out there. Whatever it is you're doing fine, you know.
I felt like you spoke to my younger self there. It's like I was actually thinking, I don't know what the answer is to this. And I was like, you know what? That's probably what I would say to my younger self, is that it might seem like you're doing the wrong thing, but you'll be fine. You'll be okay. You're doing really, really great.
Yeah.
I think women just need to experience things. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to be limited, so don't limit ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's so hard to do, obviously, but just keep that in your mind, and you might, you know, even if it's a small thing, you might surprise yourself.
Yeah. I mean, How Dare She was meant to be an exploration into what it means to be a woman in this day and age. But I feel like today, as we've gone through this conversation, we realize that you can be anything you want. There is no one box that you have to fit into, and no one way in which you need to define yourself as. And I find that it's just so incredibly liberating to be a woman in this time and age. Sometimes I think about my grandma. My grandma's a crazy woman, and she would have been the best woman in our day and age. She would have been a hardcore feminist. And I imagine how wonderful it would be for all the women in the past to sort of walk the kind of lives that we have now. And we're all doing a good job. Pat ourselves on the back. Thank you all for being here today, Alicia and Osman, Melizarani. You guys have been incredible and shared so many amazing things with me. And I think there were so many angles in which you've explored what it means to be a woman that I didn't even think about. So I appreciate you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. We're probably going to tag all your Instagrams and all your links for everything. So make sure everybody who's listening, follow them, because these women are absolutely incredible. Again, this is all in conjunction with Babel Dances. It's a she thing, not How Dare She. Next up, we actually have if you've got some time, you can stick around for conversations with a life coach by Danya and Maybelline. And the topic is about self-affirmation versus self-soothing. So that's something really interesting that you guys can sort of pick up on. So to just generally end this, we started the whole topic with the question, how dare she? And I feel like at the end of all our conversations, the question we should be asking ourselves is really, how dare she not, right? Because we can do anything in the world. Thank you all so much for being here today. I love you guys so much. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you guys. Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Anne.
So much for having
Oh no, Anne is stuck.
Oh
no. That's so sad. Anne, come back. Come back to us.
Thank you.